Hello out there. We're on the air. Happy Friday, everybody. Holy cow, it's Friday already. Man, these weeks are just flying by. Let's check on the Zap stream, make sure we're good there. Looks like we are. There we go. Good morning. Welcome to the Friday edition of the Daily Bitcoin Journey, the show that's focused on actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. It is Friday, and usually we do the Bitcoin Q&A on Thursdays, but yesterday I was MIA. I don't know if Zap stream's working or not here. Oh yeah, chat doesn't, it's just got a spinny loady thing. Anyways, it seems to be working. We got BTC Backpacker, good morning. Francis, Adam, Letha, good morning. How's everybody doing? I just realized I forgot to share this on Nostr, so I'll do that slowly. Okay. A little bit tired today. As I mentioned last week, we have our men's nights on Thursday nights now. And so it's pretty late. I think I was up till about 12:30 or 1 o'clock last night and just couldn't sleep. You're driving in the dark. You got to be fairly alert and pretty wound up. So got home late, got to bed late, got up early. So we're going to see how the show goes today. Jason's in the house. Good morning, buddy. So where should we start? Where do we begin here? I'll get some metrics today. We haven't done metrics in a while. Kind of just been skipping on it. I don't know. It just seems to me like, and I don't know if you guys are getting the same vibe right now as me, but it just seems like it's the same thing over and over and over again in Bitcoin right now. Price is hardly moving. I mean, it's gone up the last couple days, but like everything's just kind of the same week after week. Around 60,000 bucks. You just hear of so many different ETFs right now that are buying Bitcoin. I saw one the other day. I think it was the highest one yet. I forget what it was. I might have to take a look here quickly. But it's crazy. It's crazy that all this is happening right now, and it seems like nothing's really changing price-wise. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, honestly. I just don't understand how so many companies, how many countries, how many individuals are getting into Bitcoin right now, and the price is hardly moving. It doesn't make sense in my head right now. I'm trying to make sense of it, but I can't. But to me, that suggests that the longer you go sideways like this and the more pent up demand that's happening here, I think it's just going to, one day, it's just going to go apeshit. And I don't know what's going to trigger it. I have no idea. It just feels like we're so close to that right now. And good or bad, I don't know if you're hoping for that or hoping for the price to stay down for a while. It just seems like it has to happen, whether you want to or not. It just seems like it's been pent up for way too long here, and there's way too much happening in Bitcoin for it to just stay sideways for a while here. So it is Friday buy day. That's a good call. That's Friday buy day in terms of buying Bitcoin and the biceps. Double meaning there. Friday buy day. LVO, good morning. Carl, how you doing? How we doing? Unfortunately, I don't have any Baileys in my coffee today. I ran out last week and still haven't replenished that, but we'll be okay. Just a nice treat once in a while to have some Baileys in the coffee. I was doing it every Friday for a while, but ran out. So if anybody wants to send me a bottle of Baileys, I should have put that as the stream goal today. Bottle of Baileys. Oh, well, too late. Oh, that was me. Okay. So we got block height 843,864 today. That's what we're looking at. 843,000 blocks have been mined since January the 3rd, 2009. The fees right now are incredibly low, 12 sats per VByte. It looks like it's slowing down quite a bit since the Ruins 1 week hurrah that they had there. So it's slowing down. We got 12 sats per VByte. It's a great day to be transacting on Bitcoin if you have to. We had to move some Bitcoin yesterday. We did our first day of the Bitcoin golf tour. So with that, we're taking 1 million sats in a wallet each, 1 million each. And we're seeing how many rounds of golf that can buy us over the next, I don't know. I think for the rest of our life, it's going to last. So we're going to do 4 rounds this summer. We're going to film it all. We're going to document it all. We're going to put it on the channel here. And we're hopefully going to get some more golfers into Bitcoin. Kind of the focus on that, and the idea is that the best thing we can do in Bitcoin is talk about the long-term view, the low time preference stuff. And so when people see things like the Bitcoin Golf Tour, like the 88 Sats project with a very long-term focus, that's kind of the idea with all this. Because I think that a lot of people have been not brainwashed, but led to believe that Bitcoin's basically a get-rich-quick scheme. You put $1,000 in this month and you're going to have a Lamborghini next month. When really, if you spend any sort of time in Bitcoin, it couldn't be that couldn't be further from the truth. So that's kind of the message we're trying to portray within Bitcoin, and including our favorite pastime, golf. Speaking of golf, I don't know if anybody's been following this or not, but this morning I saw that Scotty Scheffler was detained and arrested for a traffic violation this morning. So that was early. That was when I got up about two hours ago. And I saw that the PGA Championship was delayed a little bit. So I was wondering if that had anything to do with Scotty being detained, because I think he had an early tee time this morning. So I don't know. Anybody in the chat find anything on that this morning? I was too busy looking for Bitcoin news here, but interesting nonetheless. King, good morning. Okay, let's get back to the metrics here. Jumping around too much. The price today, $66,266 US. 1 year ago today, you could have purchased a Bitcoin for $27,396, and 4 years ago for $9,679 US. Under 10K. Less than 4 years ago, one Bitcoin was under 10K. Imagine what. No, we're not going to go there. Moscow time today, $1 equals 1509, 1,500 sats for $1. And the price in Canada, we're back in the 90s, 90,130 Canadian dollars. And the Moose Jaw time, $1 Canadian, 1 loonie, will get you 1,165 sats. So there you go. There is the metrics for today. We're all caught up. Let's check over on Zap.stream. What's going on there? Noah is over there. She says, hi, living in the futurers. Made it back to Zap.stream. Yay. Zap.stream gods. Crypto Heathen says, unfortunately, no Baileys today because I feel a cold creeping in. I do too, and I can't really tell if it's just lack of sleep or if it's a cold. But anyways, Daniel Zap, 21 sats. Thank you, my friend. TGIF. And Noah Zap, 21 sats over in Zap.stream. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. I got a couple things we're going to run through in terms of questions that came in over the last week. So I'm going to talk about those quickly. But in the meantime, if you guys have anything that you want to talk about today, it's a completely blank slate. So throw it in the comments either on YouTube or Zap.stream. Whether it's a question, whether it's a topic you want to discuss to do with Bitcoin or not. We've been kind of talking a lot about business lately and earning sats and creating content and finding new ways to succeed, I guess, in this wild world that we're living into here, or that we're moving into here. And maybe I'll just put that on pause for 1 second. We'll get back to that. But let's talk about this. Alvio says, I have around $5,000 worth of Ethereum waiting for a good time to swap it into sats. That's pretty timely there, actually. So I don't know how many of we'll call them friends. They're more just like Bitcoin acquaintances, I guess, people who have been talking back and forth with me for the last couple of years, buying Bitcoin, me helping them get into Bitcoin. And a lot of them still are holding Ethereum. And I remember it was either a year or two ago, quite a while ago, I told them just like, don't wait for the price of Ethereum to get back where you can cash out to basically break even. It seemed like that's what everybody's waiting for, is that let's say they bought Ethereum at $3,000 and it's at 2,500 today. And so they're waiting for it to get back to 3,000 where they originally bought it at in order for them to feel better about their investment. And then they're going to swap it into Bitcoin. And I said, don't even worry about the dollar price of Ethereum. Ethereum is going to continue to go down forever against Bitcoin because, first of all, it has none of the same characteristics. It's completely different. It doesn't have a fixed supply. It's a security, all these different reasons of why they should be swapping Bitcoin for it. And they didn't, of course. But if you look at the chart for Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's basically just like a drop, the other side of a mountain. That's what it looks like, the dropping down. And it will continue to. So what I would say there is don't wait for, completely forget about the price that you paid for it versus what it's worth now. Swap every single, whatever you call it, Ethereum token or fraction of a Ethereum token for Bitcoin. Because it's only going to get worse. It's gone down and down and down, and it's only going to keep going. So that would be my advice. Don't wait for it to swap it into sats. Do that as soon as you possibly can. There's too many, not even just the price there, but I think that there's going to be a lot of things happening in these next couple of years in terms of the SEC and other regulatory bodies who are going to be cracking down on cryptocurrencies because they're securities. And all these different exchanges, all of these tokens are securities. They don't pass the Howey test. So with that in mind, all these exchanges are going to be in big trouble. And when the exchanges go down, the liquidity there for Ethereum and all these other altcoins aren't going to be there. So when you try to go to sell those coins, there's going to be no buyers for them. So, I mean, everybody's trying to time the Bitcoin versus the alt runs, but it's like, there's some shit coming here. So that's what I would say on that is just, if you still can, while we can, swap everything you have for Bitcoin. Here we go. Crypto Ethan says he sent this. Look at this chart. Thank you. So let's look at this chart for Bitcoin, Ethereum. I guess this must be the Bitcoin version of going up, because the Ethereum side of it has been going down and down and down. Oh, this is 1 day. Yeah, there we go. That makes more sense. So in the last year, the 1 day is up. So, I mean, it's a good day to sell it then. You're 3% up today. But for the last year, it's been 30% down. And all time is 30% down. And it will continue to go down. So, I mean, without beating a dead horse here, I would say just take all the Ethereum you have and swap it for as many sats as you can get right now. So that must be, yeah, that's 0.4 of a Bitcoin is equal to 1 Ethereum. Thanks for sharing that, Crypto Heathen. Let's see if I can zap you for that. Live on air zap. Can we do it? See if it works. Come on, Albie. Don't let me down. Oh, no, I need to enter my password. Fucking thing. Sorry, Crypto Ethan. I'll zap you on Nostr later. Okay, so let's get to some questions here. The first question today that we had was actually from Adam, and I think I saw him in the chat here a little bit earlier. I don't know if he's still here or not, but his question was, let me bring it up here quickly so I don't mess it up. So this was from email. So there's pretty much 3 ways you can get a hold of me in terms of questions for the Q&As. Number 1 is email, 88sats@proton.me. Just send the question in there. All my contact information is in the description here if you ever want to get in touch with me. So that's, or especially for questions. So that's one way. The second way is through YouTube comments. I usually check those and try to respond to them if I can. And the third one is just show up on, I think we're going to start doing these Fridays. I think we're going to switch the Bitcoin Q&A to be Fridays. So start showing up on Fridays as you are and ask the question live in the chat. So this is the first question from Adam. He says, can you explain the difference between keys and backup phrases, 12 or 24 words, and in words that future Bitcoiners will understand? Yeah, so essentially what happens there is that every time you set up a new Bitcoin wallet, you get a public and a private key pair. And essentially what this new BIP, I think it's BIP 39. I should double check that quickly so I'm getting the right information here. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but basically what the BIPs are is Bitcoin improvement proposals. And so that's I don't know how many we're at now, but that's essentially a way to make Bitcoin better and easier for people to use, the Bitcoin BIP, the BIPs. And so essentially what this one did is it took the back or the private key and it converted it from a long string of numbers and words into 12 words or 24 words. So I got an email here. This is actually from our friend James Bond, who's sometimes in the chat, not today. But this is an email he sent me a little while ago, and I referred to it this morning because it has some really good information here. So it says, instead of generating a giant number that nobody can read, the BIP 39 generates 12 or 24 words from a dictionary out of 2,048 words that represent that private key. So that's essentially what it did. It took this very long phrase, or I guess you'd say a phrase, and it converts it into 12 or 24 word backup phrase. And so there's 2,048 words that make up all these different private keys. And that's what you have. Every time you create a wallet, you have the 12 words, you have the 24 words, and that's how you restore your wallet. So if something were to ever happen to your device, whether it's your phone that you're using for your Bitcoin wallet, or like a cold card, or a Blockstream Jade, a Trezor, anything, if you happen to lose that, or if it gets destroyed, you can simply use these 12 or 24 words, type them into a new wallet, and it will bring up your Bitcoin balance, and you can spend your Bitcoin. So essentially there, if anybody else has access to your backup phrase, your 12 or 24 words, then they essentially own your Bitcoin because they have access to your wallet and they have the ability to move that Bitcoin out of that wallet. So that's essentially what the backup phrase there is. In terms of like choosing a 12 or 24 word phrase, that's the next part of this email that I wanted to share because it's pretty interesting. So it says that, I'll maybe just bring this up so it's a little bit easier to follow. So it says that it gives us possible combinations for 12 word seed phrases of 10 to the power of 39. I think that's what it is. And then possible combinations for a 24 word seed phrase is 10 to the power of 79. So to put those numbers into context, the grains of sand on Earth is 10 to the power of 18. And the stars in the universe is 10 to the power of 23. So it says it would be easier for you to find a grain of sand that I hid somewhere on Earth than to guess a 12-word seed phrase. So that's kind of the idea with the backup phrases and the randomness of these 2,048 words, is that it's pretty much impossible for somebody just to guess it. So then it keeps going though. It says that, and this was interesting to me. It says that a 24-word seed phrase is safer because the number is bigger, right? And it says theoretically yes, but in practice it turns out maybe not. So then it gets into the wallets and how they generate the key phrases or the backup phrases. And it basically says that at the end of the day, it says that you should be using 12 words. That's their conclusion here. And it says basically because of it says the reality is that in production, 12-word seed phrases are just as cryptographically secure as 24-word seed phrases. And number two, it's more likely that you lose your crypto by making a mistake than somebody hacking your seed phrase. So it's basically saying that you should use 12-word backup phrases just because it's easier to memorize. There's less that can go wrong. If you think about it, and I think that a lot of people should be checking on this. If you go to read your seed phrase, if you had your wife or your son, your daughter, read your seed phrase, your backup phrase, could they read the words on there? I know a lot of people have very messy handwriting, and obviously we don't want to be putting these on anything digital where you could type it. So a lot of people have messy handwriting, and I think that their backup phrases, their family members or whoever's about to retrieve their Bitcoin would have a very hard time reading some of the words. So it's basically saying that the 24-word backup phrase is more secure, but it's almost over the top secure because you don't really need that much randomness there. That's what it's saying. But it's also saying that because of that, you should consider using a 12-word phrase because there's less that can go wrong there. If you have 12 words written down, there might be 1 or 2 words that somebody has trouble reading and typing into a restore wallet. But if you have 24 words there's more that can go wrong. You could spell something wrong. There's just more variables there, right? So it's suggesting to use a 12-word seed phrase where possible. What I would say on that is that I think for the most part, depending on how your security setup is, for me personally, I mean, I don't love talking about my security setup live on the air, but just for me personally, I have the majority of my Bitcoin across a couple different multi-signature setups, and those all have 24 words in them. So I have a seed plate somewhere that's not obviously sitting in my house, and with that, it has the 12 on the front, the 12 on the back. So that's my 24 words. And you can punch them in there. So if something were to ever happen to the paper in your house or your safe got stolen, you still have your steel there. And so with the 24 words, I think that the reason I did that is because you can do a few more things with the cold card with 24 words than you can with the 12. But for all the other wallets I have, it's just 12 words. And I've talked about kind of having like a doomsday wallet. I would put that 12 words as well, because you can much more think about trying to memorize 12 words. That's hard enough. But then compare that to 24 words. If you tried to memorize 24 words, I think you'd be in some trouble there. So in terms of like your main stack, you could either use 12 or 24, depending on what you want to do and depending on the different features you want to utilize in your device. But for the most part, I would agree with this. And I would say that 12 words is more than sufficient for a backup phrase. So every time you set up a new wallet, a new device, you get the choice between 12 and 24 words for the most part, if you're using a good wallet. So that's what I would say on that, is I would stick to 12 words. It's easier to memorize. There's less that can go wrong. And you don't really get much more security from the 24 words. So that's what I would say on that, Adam. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense to you. Let's take a slight break and catch up on a few chats here. LVO says time is better than timing. In Bitcoin, absolutely it is. King says, I'm trying to find a smart way to roll my RSP over to my savings and buy Bitcoin. So although I'm not a financial advisor, the one thing I would say on that, King, is if you are wanting to cash out essentially your RSPs, do it over a couple of years. Or, I mean, this is the kind of the dilemma right now for people like King, I think, because we're in a very unique position right now where we kind of know what's coming here. We've seen all these ETFs, all this demand, these countries. There's so much happening in Bitcoin right now. The halving just happened. And typically after a halving, within the next 6 months, usually in the fall that follows the halving, the price just rips. So you really have to take a good look at, because obviously the first piece of advice that I would say is try to spread that over a couple of years, your RSP, because every time you cash out, your RSP, it just gets added to your taxable income for the year. So you pay more tax. So if you can spread that out over, let's say 3 years and take 20,000 a year, it's significantly less tax that you're paying there because you're spreading it out versus claiming 60,000 in 1 year. That would bump your taxes up. You'd be in a higher tax bracket and you'd pay more tax on that. But if you spread it out over 3 years, that your tax rate would be lower. So you'd be paying less tax over the 3 years. So that's usually what you would do there. But in this case, where we're in May, excuse me, where we're in May that follows a halving, we kind of know what's coming here. So you have to figure out is the reward here going to be higher than the fees and taxes that I'm going to pay on that? Because if it is, maybe it's just a smart move to cash it all out today and buy Bitcoin, and then maybe put aside some of that Bitcoin to pay off your tax bill in 2025. That's kind of a decision that you have to make, and I can't really answer that for you, obviously, because I have no idea what's going to happen. I have an idea. I have a good idea of what I think is going to happen, but that doesn't mean it will happen. So that's what I would say there. The last thing you want to do is get hammered with a bunch of tax in 2025, and Bitcoin really didn't do anything. And you just, it was a dud move. So things to consider there for sure. What do we got here? Tommy D, good morning, buddy. Oh, here's some info on Scheffler. What? No way. Jason says, Scotty Scheffler was arrested for trying to enter Valhalla, where a bus killed a person attempting to go around the crime scene. He's charged with reckless driving, criminal mischief, and third-degree assault. Wow, that's tough for him. How come? I guess I haven't been paying too close attention to the golf this morning, but that's wild. That's wild. King says, I'm going to switch from 24 to 12. I mean, for the most part, that's your best play. It's easier to store it. It's easier to memorize it. Less that can go wrong. It just makes sense to me. And when things make sense, that's what you do. Rick says, have you smashed the like yet? That's a good question. Let's check it out. How many people have? 11. Pretty good. We'll take that. What's happening over on the Zap.stream? Noah says, is the P and BIP proposal not protocol? I had it wrong this whole time. And then Daniel says, yes, it is a Bitcoin improvement proposal. So that's, I don't know the ins and outs of the BIPs. I just know that it's the Bitcoin developers that are making the BIPs and trying to make Bitcoin better, more usable, more efficient, without doing too much in terms of changing the code. So there's been a couple different camps in the last month or two who have been arguing about this kind of stuff. You have one side of the coin, the developers, the Matodels, the OpenSats, they're all working. They want to fund Bitcoin developers to make Bitcoin better. That's kind of their main goal. The other side of the camp is like the Michael Saylors. And if you've been paying attention to Michael Saylor and what he's been doing, he seems like he doesn't want Bitcoin to change. He wants to leave it the exact same way because he sees it more as property than cash. So I don't know where you fall in there. I don't really know where I fall in there. I see it as both. And I think if we use it for both, it's going to be better for everybody. And so Michael Saylor is basically saying that just leave it alone. It's property. It's the best property that's ever existed. So why would we make any changes to it? So like I said, two sides of it. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. That's not for me to say. I do think that we should be trying to improve it in any way that we can without compromising the core of it. And I think that the Bitcoin developers have done a really good job of doing that without changing the core of it. I'm looking for a better word, but it's Friday and I can't find it. So we're going to go with core. So that is the first question. I hope that makes sense, Adam. What else do we got here? The second question that Adam had, he said, if Bitcoin is decentralized, who changes the difficulty of the blocks for the miners? That's a really good question. And I didn't honestly know this until I looked at it this morning. So it's actually not anybody or anyone who changes the difficulty of the blocks. It's an algorithm. So every 2016 blocks, the difficulty is adjusted. So it basically looks at how the Bitcoin blockchain is supposed to be every 10 minutes on average. That's how many, every block, every 10 minutes on average is mined. And so the difficulty algorithm, it looks at, was it faster or was it slower and by how much? So let's say that 2016 blocks went by and it was way ahead of schedule. way ahead of, so it'd be 2016 times 10. That's how many minutes they would expect. But if it was way ahead of that schedule, then the difficulty would go up. Because if the blocks are coming in faster, it means that the miners are solving the equation faster. And so the blocks are coming in faster, right? And so on the flip side of that, if they saw the 2016 blocks and it took longer than expected, then the difficulty adjustment goes down, because it's taken the miners longer to solve the blocks. So that means it's too hard. The equation's too hard. There's not enough people mining. So, and that's essentially the other variable there, is how many people are mining, how much power is going into the Bitcoin network. The higher the power, the more guesses, the faster the equations are solved. The less people mining, the longer it takes to solve those blocks. So that's not really much else to say on that, other than it's just an algorithm that changes it automatically based on how long it's taken since the last difficulty adjustment. And if it's ahead of schedule, they bump up the difficulty. If it's behind schedule, they decrease the difficulty adjustment. So there you go. King says it's automatic. It's built into the protocol. Yeah, it's an algorithm that's part of the protocol. So it's not like 10 people sit around a table and look at the Bitcoin hash rate and the blocks that have come in and say, should we bump it up or should we leave it? Or do we decrease it? Which is good, because the whole idea of Bitcoin is that it's rules without rulers. So, think of that. That's kind of how our world works now, where 10 people sit in a room, they make the decision. There's so much bias, there's so many incentives in there, and so much subjectiveness. Everybody's looking out for themselves, and everybody wants to, is taking money from somebody else. That's our politics, essentially. And so with Bitcoin, there's no humans involved. It's the protocol, it's an algorithm, and it changes based on what actually happened, not what some person wants to happen. So there you go. BTC Backpacker says, how would the dip affect our current holdings? We need to transfer or change anything with our stack being in the old format? Oh, the BIP. No, you shouldn't. Unless it's a hard fork within Bitcoin, you should never have to change anything with your Bitcoin. If there's a new BIP, I think you just have to update your firmware for it, and then it would show the new BIP and how that works. I think that even if if you had Bitcoin today and you were running it on Sparrow and a cold card, and you never updated your firmware, the only thing that you would miss out on there is all the improvements to Bitcoin, all the updates to it, essentially. And so you'd still have your Bitcoin there. It would just look a little bit differently than somebody who had been keeping up with their firmware. So in terms of that, that's something that I need to do a little bit of work on myself in terms of the firmware, because I haven't updated mine in a couple of years. And I've heard people saying that you should be updating it. It's not like my Bitcoin's going to disappear. But if you're running a node and you want to see things at the most accurate state of the network, then you want to keep up to the firmware updates. So something I got to work on for sure. Crypto Ethan says, here's a question. Why should I run a Bitcoin node if there's no monetary incentive like mining, earning block rewards? What's the benefit or utility? That's a really good question. And kind of my whole theory within Bitcoin, for the people out there who are somewhat new, I think that you should just be starting very slow, and you should be focusing your time and your energy on accumulating as much Bitcoin as possible. That's how I would start out in Bitcoin. And that doesn't include running a Bitcoin node. That doesn't include running a Lightning node. Although for the most part, a Bitcoin node is very cheap to set up. It just takes time. That's what I'm saying, is that even though it doesn't cost much to run a node, it takes time and it takes your energy away from getting as much as you can. And let's say you have an old computer, instead of running a node on that, maybe you just convert that, you sell it, and you buy Bitcoin with it. That's what I'd be saying with that. But once you get to a point where, you have a really good understanding of Bitcoin, you feel like you've been accumulating enough. It's never really enough, but you know what I mean. Then you can start looking into running your own server, running your own node, setting up a Lightning channel, mining Bitcoin. It's just, there's so much within Bitcoin, and everybody kind of gets into it and they want to do everything at once. And I just think that it's a recipe for disaster. But in terms of why you should be running a node, it's basically just to verify that the blockchain is accurate. Because if you you download a Sparrow wallet, you hook up to somebody else's node, you're essentially just trusting them that their information is accurate. And the whole thing within Bitcoin is that you shouldn't be trusting anybody else. And that's why you run a Bitcoin node, is because you can verify the transactions yourself. You can verify the fact that whatever it says you have for Bitcoin is actually your Bitcoin and it's on the blockchain, essentially. So there is no monetary incentives. There's no reason to run a node. You're not going to make any money off it. You're going to lose some money. But everything within Bitcoin is about taking personal responsibility. And so when you're running your own node, you don't have to put your trust in anybody else. It's hooked up to your node, which is connected directly to Bitcoin Core or whatever you're using. And you can see the blockchain, you can see the ledger for yourself and verify that the transactions that you have done are actually within the ledger. So, and as Daniel says here, there's a privacy benefit if you're running your own node. So there's privacy there. And Noah said, the reason to run a node is to verify your transactions yourself. Yes, exactly. So there's counterparty risk there, as she said. If you're hooking up to, if you've gone through all the steps of taking self-custody of your Bitcoin, setting up on a cold card, you've done everything right. But if you're not running your own node, you're essentially just trusting somebody else's. Because if you look at your Sparrow wallet, it'll say at the very bottom, it'll say whose node you're connected to. And so they can, as Daniel said, they can see all your transactions. So that's a privacy issue for one. But you're also trusting the fact that the information that they're providing there is accurate. And with Bitcoin, the whole idea, as I said, is that you shouldn't have to trust anybody. You should be able to verify it yourself. And so that's kind of the purpose of running your own Bitcoin node. And so if you are interested in running a node, I think that there's a lot of really good videos on YouTube. You can set it up yourself fairly easy. Basically, all you need is a bunch of memory on your laptop. And you're just downloading a copy of the software. I think it's Bitcoin Core, the software and the ledger, essentially, So the reason why Bitcoin is so decentralized is because every 10 minutes when a block is mined, that new updated version of the blockchain, of the ledger, gets sent out to every single person who's running a node. So every person running a node has a copy of the ledger now. So it's impossible to stop it. It's impossible to take it down. It's impossible to change any transactions in Bitcoin, because you'd have to go to every single person who's running a node and make that change on their ledger, and then go to the next one and make that change on their ledger. And it's impossible to do. So I definitely would encourage anybody out there who has the time and the resources to run their own node, highly encourage it. Just don't, if you're somebody who's new to Bitcoin, don't make that like an end all be all priority to get into Bitcoin. Just get as much as you can, and then gradually keep learning and keep doing different things within Bitcoin. But that is a very important one, just so you can verify the fact that your transactions are legit. BTC Backpacker says, firmware, I have mine in cold storage. So I mean, you still have to update your firmware, even if you have it in cold storage. Like a cold card, they do updates all the time, and you're supposed to update your firmware if you have it on like a cold card or something. It just has different features. The bips are in there. The improvements, the things that the Bitcoin developers are working on, that's what gets worked into these firmware updates. So even if you have it in cold storage, I mean, if you want to have the most up-to-date, accurate version of the ledger, according to the consensus, then you should be updating your firmware. But for the most part, I mean, for guys like me, for guys like you, girls like you, I don't know. You buy Bitcoin, you put it cold storage, you're going to have it there in 50 years from now, whether you update your firmware or not. I'm pretty sure. I hope so anyways. Daniel says it's not enough to accumulate. You have to keep it in your hands too. I agree about beginners not worrying about too much, but if you want to hold long term, you need to learn to be a sovereign. I definitely agree with that. It's just you have to put yourself in, and I struggle with this sometimes too, but you have to put yourself in the position of a new Bitcoiner. And a lot of people don't even have a clue what a node is. So I'm not talking about like 5 years here in Bitcoin is in your learning. Like when you're first getting into Bitcoin, there's just so much to know. And I think you should be focused on kind of the basics there in terms of, how to properly store it for one. Once you can kind of get past that and focus on accumulation, then you can look into running a node. And I would love to. I feel really bad that I don't run a node. It's something that I'm going to do in 2024, without a doubt. I just haven't had the time and the energy to do it so far. I've been working on quite a bit of stuff, and I sometimes just need to rein myself in. And Bitcoin node is on the list, but it's not at the top of my list priority wise. So that's that. What else did we have here? In terms of Bitcoin news, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot. Honestly, I went through about 50 tweets, 50 posts on Telegram, and I couldn't really find anything that was worth talking about today. It just seems like it's over and over again. We're finding out that more banks, more companies are buying the Bitcoin ETF. We're finding out that countries are mining Bitcoin. There's, you can only say it so many times without just realizing where we are right now. And I said this a couple of days ago, but it's moving a lot faster than I was expecting it to. We have banks that are buying Bitcoin. Banks. We talked about it, for the last a lot of months and some years now that this probably will happen, but we're here. It's happening right now. Banks are buying Bitcoin, which is crazy to me. But at the same time, I get it because there's so much uncertainty in the dollar wise right now. I also saw that China's offloading a whole bunch of American treasuries, US treasuries. And that's a very bad thing for the US because I think China's the biggest holder of US treasuries. And so they're offloading these, essentially making the dollar is just going to continue to go down and down. And at some point, you can look at all the news you want to and everything going on in Bitcoin. But at some point, you just kind of have to use common sense and logic here and foresee what's coming. $35 trillion worth of debt is unsurmountable. It's going to take 5,000 years to pay that off. It's never going to happen. And so they realize that. People realize that. And so what's going to happen? They're going to do something stupid. They're either going to reset the currency and try to push everybody into the CBDCs, which will fail. But you have the ETFs and you have these big banks who are buying Bitcoin. I just think that the one thing that's done is that it's basically made Bitcoin even more unstoppable somehow. Because there's no way the banks, these big investment funds, they have way too much invested now to see it fail. And they're just going to keep buying it and buying it. So in terms of Bitcoin news today, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot, mostly because we know what's happening here. We know what's coming. And sometime within these next 5 months, we're going to wake up one day and we're going to look back in May and think, man, $60,000 Bitcoin. Imagine how many sats I could have got for $1,000 compared to today. So do what you can in terms of get it while you can. It's not going to be this price forever. In fact, I can't believe that it is still this low. King says, I spun up my own node 2 days ago and linked it to Sparrow. There you go. There you go. King says, I read on Twitter yesterday that hedge funds are positioning themselves to short Bitcoin, manipulating the price. I mean, they can only manipulate it for so long. I agree that they're trying to manipulate it mostly just to keep everybody's eyes off it. Because if Bitcoin was $200,000 right now, that's all that people see. We get pretty entrenched in our little Bitcoin community here, and we understand what Bitcoin's actually worth. But for the average person, all that they look at is the price of Bitcoin in US dollars, which is a completely illusionary measurement system. But if Bitcoin was, let's say it went to $200,000 tomorrow, like everybody would be texting you. Everybody would be trying to buy Bitcoin. That's how humans are. That's how psychology works. Nobody buys it when it's down. Nobody buys it when it's flatlining for a while because it's not exciting. The majority of people who get into Bitcoin are there to make money. They get in because the number's going up. And a lot of people stick around after that happens, but that's the driving force to get people to look at Bitcoin. And the longer they can keep the price of Bitcoin down, the less eyes they're going to have on it, and the more of that they're going to be able to accumulate. They're not worried about the price. They're worried about the supply of Bitcoin. And so if it did go up and everybody was trying to buy Bitcoin tomorrow, then their available supply of Bitcoin, which is already dwindling, would go down. And I saw a post today that said that between MicroStrategy and Tether, between them, they're buying 350 Bitcoin per day on average. That's two companies, two corporations on Earth buying 350 Bitcoin per day. And after the halving on April 19th, the amount of new Bitcoin being created is 450 per day. So two corporations, Tether and MicroStrategy, are buying 350 Bitcoin per day. The new supply of Bitcoin per day is 450. So you add Block into that, who's putting 10% of their gross profits into Bitcoin every month. And that, I would say, is going to push it over the 450. So that's three corporations on Earth that are buying more Bitcoin per day than the new Bitcoin being created. So at some point, there will be this massive supply crunch as all of it flows out of Grayscale, as more and more companies start doing the same as Block, Tether, MicroStrategy. You throw Metaplan into that now. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this year it happens. Adam says, I'm back. What did I miss? Well, I answered your two questions, so you might have to go back and watch them on here. But I answered your two questions about the backup phrase and what was the other one? Difficulty adjustment. And shout out to Microdose over in Zap.stream, Zap 21 sats. Appreciate that. Thank you. I think that I've seen that face over there in Zap.stream before. But anyways, thank you. So that's pretty much what I got today. Adam says, please lower the price so I can get more sats. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that when the price goes up, our net worth goes up. When the price goes down, we can buy more Bitcoin. If you're somebody who understands where this whole thing's going and you're not really paying attention to what the price is doing, you know where this is going long term, then when the price goes down, you can just get more sats for your dollar. So Bitcoin is really a win-win in a lot of ways. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. Unless there's any more questions or discussions that we want to talk about, I think that's it for this Friday episode today. The one thing that I did want to kind of mention before we leave here today is that I just feel like, me personally, there we go. There we go. Breaking news. LVO just converted ETH into 0.08, also known as 8 million sats live. There you go. If 88 sats radio does nothing else in history, is remembered for nothing else in history, we'll always have LVO converting his or her Ethereum into Bitcoin on May 17th, 2024. The best decision of your entire life. Live on air. Hey, it looks like Bitcoin Changes Everything has changed his name. That looks like Bodhi to me. But maybe I doxed him there. Anyways, he said, good morning, living in the future visionaries and others. Welcome to the future. Welcome all. The one thing I was going to say here before we go is that, and this is just a message to me as well. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm basically just recognizing something and explaining something that's happening in my life lately. So obviously I've been paying a lot of attention to the show. I've been paying a lot of attention to living in the future. My life has basically been consumed by Bitcoin. When I'm not doing a show, I'm listening to shows, I'm listening to interviews, I'm thinking about the future. That's where I'm trying to spend the majority of my time in terms of where I'm putting my energy, focused on the future there. And so some days you just kind of have to take a step back and say, you know what, as good as this is going to be, as good as I'm preparing for what's coming here, I need to focus on the present a little bit. Go for a walk, spend some time with your family, spend some time with your dog, whatever it is. I feel like the more time you spend to Bitcoin, the less time you spend with the other parts of your life. And Bitcoin's great. It's going to be here. It's going to win. But at the same time, you only have so many days and you only have so many blocks with your loved ones. And so, just think about that. Is there anything else we could be doing? Is there anything else you could be doing to help those people and to spend more time with them instead of just solely focused on Bitcoin in the future? Make sure you take time to touch grass, as they say. Get outside, do some things that you love, because we're only on this earth for a very short time. And if we're spending all of our focus on Bitcoin and all of our attention and mental capacity in the future, then we're going to miss out on life, essentially. So as much as we want this to happen, as fast as we want this to happen, thinking 10 years out, how much we're going to be able to buy with the Bitcoin that we have today. In 10 years from now, think about how old you're going to be. Think about how old your parents are going to be. Think about how much is going to change between then and now. And as much as you're going to be happy that your Bitcoin is worth a lot more, everybody's older. You're going to be able to do less things than you were today. So just enjoy every day. That's what I would say. And don't focus too much on the future. Prepare for it as best you can. But in 10 years from now, you're going to look back and wish that you were here today. Regardless of what the price of Bitcoin is, regardless of anything else, you would give anything to come back to today. So there you go. Did not expect to get any sort of emotional there, but anyways, I did. So have to love doing that on the live shows. That's what I'll end it with. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your time here. And I had one more thing to talk about, but I'll save it for the next chat. So have a great weekend, everybody. Keep your fingers crossed that Scotty Scheffler is not going to be in too much trouble. And I don't know if he might be disqualified, I guess, which is really going to hurt my chances in the Bitcoin golf pool. Because for the first time, I took Scotty Scheffler. I've been talking about it forever, about how he just ruins every golf pool that I've ever done. And I finally picked him this week. And he gets arrested for trying to get to the golf course. Some people just shouldn't bet. And I'm one of those people. So anyways, everybody, I see the comments coming in. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate you for being here and for showing up every single day, making this show what it is. And that's it. So have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here first thing on Monday morning. Bye-bye.